I wanted to start a magazine that focused on the positives but didn't ignore the negatives. I wanted it to be Govanhill centric, so that it would speak to and for and with and of the people of Govanhill. It's about kind of celebrating the differences that make Govanhill so unique. A huge part of the magazine is about providing a platform to typically underrepresented and marginalised voices. There's a real lack of diversity within the mainstream media. Most of the news is written by white middle-class men. This magazine is kind of a direct challenge to that, to try and bring more diversity into media, to try and make media more interesting and accessible to people who come from different backgrounds. Here, the majority of the content is written by people who aren't journalists, but who are kind of engaged and active members of the community and who want to share their own views and their own perspectives. And I think that's what makes it a bit different. There's about 50, 60 different volunteers who contribute to each issue. It's a real kind of community effort.
Hi, I'm Craig Hunter. I've written a few things for the magazine and done a bit of editing, proofreading and stuff. I got involved with the magazine just for something to do, to be productive in the area. There feels like there's so much going on and so many interesting things happening. I kind of want to play my part a little bit more.
It's been a challenge to build that community during a pandemic, but I think there's been a lot of desire from the local community to get involved with something that celebrates the area, that is positive, and that helps to bring people together.
Hi, I'm Seher Mahmood and I was a featured contributor for one article in this current issue of the magazine. And I kind of wrote this article as kind of like a gesture of gratitude for growing up in Govanhill, because it's such a sort of multicultural community and you just meet so many different people. And that, the gratitude I felt kind of really hit home when I left Glasgow to study in Dundee, and I was just surrounded by people who were white and there was no one from any community that I met. And then it just clicked in how much I had learnt growing up in Govanhill and how much I took it for granted that I learnt about so many different cultures and practices.
There's plenty of research on this too, and how the decline in local news coverage kind of corresponds with a democratic deficit, and people not being engaged with the news means they're not often engaged with kind of civic society, and they're maybe not voting. They all sort of go hand in hand. So I think being able to re-engage people with their community on a hyper-local level then can then sort of spread out to that kind of building that engagement. So for example, in the last issue, we had a guide to the Scottish elections, specifically aimed at new Scots who were able to vote in the Scottish elections for the first time. And we had a story by a woman who is a refugee, and she wrote about what it meant to her to be able to vote. And actually, although it was aimed at new Scots and aimed at people who maybe were voting for the first time, I had a lot of people who are Scottish themselves and said, actually, I didn't know all these things about the Scottish elections, and actually I've learned something from this too. And in the new issue, we've got something about community councils and what they actually do and how you can get involved and what issues they can take up. In each issue, we want to have something that just kind of maybe demystifies some element of democracy, of the wider society, and helps people to engage a bit more. At least 88 different languages spoken on the streets of Govanhill. Although the majority of the magazine is in English, we have in each issue, we have a few articles in different community languages, rather than othering other languages, to actually put them side by side.
We've been advertising in Greater Govanhill for the last 2 issues. I think it's brilliant because Greater Govanhill has got articles in loads of different languages in it, and it reaches an audience in a way that maybe traditional advertising, maybe posters, maybe digital advertising doesn't quite reach. So Govanhill is such an amazing community, and I think there's so many organisations doing so many good things, and it's really important for all these organisations, I think, to work together and kind of try and complement the work of everyone too, and create this really continue to create this really strong community that's here.
I saw this huge discrepancy between the way that Govanhill was described and often talked about in the mainstream media and by other people across Glasgow, compared to the reality of actually living here and living in this really thriving, dynamic, multicultural community which had so much going on. There's so many incredible, positive community projects and actions and groups and things happening. And if you hadn't been to visit Govanhill, you'd just think the way it was described like it was some kind of dump. And I think, often that gets kind of linked to xenophobia and racism and the fact that this is the most multicultural area in Scotland. It's not a coincidence that people sort of talk about it in a certain way, and I think there's a lot of scapegoating that goes on. There's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of just ignorance about the different cultures that live here and people who kind of call this home. Trying to engage different people with the media and trying to show different voices, because I think, without a mix of different voices in the media, then we would just hear the same voices saying the same things,